thank you everyone for coming. We are glad you are here tonight for Finding Balance, helping your child cope with change, and hopefully you cope with change and take away a few things along the way. Got a little bit of a delay here, I apologize. Or a lot of a delay, apparently.
There we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Morgan Lasek. I am a Family and Youth Services Supervisor at Children's Wisconsin. And in that position, I supervise the Marathon County Visitation and Exchange program here in Wausau. Then I also co-facilitate our elite parenting classes.
And I am Nicole Tate. I also work for Children's Wisconsin. I am a prevention supervisor for family support and parent education programs. And I supervise programming not only in Marathon County, but several other counties in the central Wisconsin area.
All right, before we dive into the presentation tonight, we just wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about self-care. During this presentation, we may touch on some topics that are a little difficult or uncomfortable. So please feel free at any time to take a break if you need one. Reach out to us for support through the chat. And as Tara said, I will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop them in there and we can answer them as we go. All right, tonight we are going to be focusing on recognizing distress, signs of distress in children. We're going to look at different age groups of kids. We kind of have them sorted out. We'll also be looking at ways to find balance in ourselves. We're noticing signs of distress within ourselves and finding balance from those. And then also looking at identifying skills for our kids to overcome challenges and find balance for them as well. So why is this important? Why do we care about this?
Well, dinner's done here.
We have some statistics for you guys. In 2020, there was a 93% increase in anxiety screening and a 62% increase in depression screening as compared to the previous year in 2019. So those screenings were from children and adults in the United States, so nationwide. And what this screening means is that it was people who called or they reached out to get a screening for anxiety and depression. So people who are noticing those signs within themselves and reaching out to get screened for these. So quite an increase there. Also nationwide, over half of 11 to 17-year-olds last year reported having thoughts of suicide or self-harm. And nearly 14% of youth in Wisconsin experienced a major depressive episode. 14% doesn't sound like a huge number, but that's actually 61,000 kids just in Wisconsin who in the last year experienced a major depressive episode. And then most importantly, 44% or 27,000 of those kids did not receive the mental health services that they needed. I think that number is pretty staggering. 27,000 kids who went without mental health care last year who really needed it.
So let's talk about how we recognize signs of distress in our children, because we are going to be the front lines as parents and caregivers for recognizing those things and then helping our children when they are struggling. So we broke it down. We're going to start with infants and then we'll kind of work our way up that age ladder. So infants, we often think infants are showing distress with the typical signs of, crying or not being able to regulate themselves. But interestingly enough, there's other signs, things like looking away. So when somebody is staring at a baby, is kind of giving that intense look, it may be stressful for them. And so they look away or they'll yawn as giving themselves kind of a break. We have a little video right here that I think shows a nice comparison between a parent who is checked in with their child and connected with their child, and then how that parent can get easily distracted. And the child, you can see this baby is really struggling with that disconnect from the parent. And I feel it's very timely in how mom is getting distracted from her baby. So we'll just give it a second here. So you could see that baby was really connected with mom. And then when mom kind of checked into her phone and checked out of the connection with her baby, the baby looked away. That little leg was just a pumping. You could see the dysregulation starting, getting anxious, looking both ways, face scrunching up. And then even when mom reconnected, baby still kept their eyes away from mom. They were still stressed out by what had happened. And it took a few minutes or a few seconds to kind of start to bring baby back again. She really had to dig in and go face to face. And so these are kind of the things that you need to look for from infants. So it's not always crying or fussiness that signals that distress. It can be other smaller signs. For toddlers, we all know toddlers, we think of the terrible twos and tantrums and things like that. But toddlers are going to express their stress and their emotions in a variety of ways. It can be just simple irritability or a sadness. They're starting to learn that their actions have consequences. If they reach for something they shouldn't, they get a yell, they realize, I shouldn't have done that. They're also start getting connected as they're getting connected to their feelings and recognizing them a little bit, a tiny bit. They still are not aware that others have feelings that are different from their own. They don't realize we all have our own feelings. That empathy and compassion isn't there yet. They very much wear their feelings, whatever that feeling might be, out in the open. It's big and it's large. And why is that? Because they lack the ability to verbalize. No toddler ever said, Mom, I'm just really tired and I need a break. It's been too much today. I just need to sit quietly by myself, right? No toddler ever said that because they just don't have that ability, the words, and they lack that emotional intellect that lets them share. And so instead, it's just a really big tantrum, or it's a short fuse, or even regression. They continue, like an infant, to regulate with their caregiver. So if their caregiver remains calm, they have a greater tendency to remain calm or stay in sync with their caregiver. Preschoolers, I love this picture. This is actually a picture of someone I know. And you can see the little guy here is, he's super happy. It's his first day of school. And she is excited because she knows what school means and how fun it's going to be. You can see Big Brother here is just really annoyed with mom for making him stand here. And then this little guy, he's not happy and he's going to make sure everybody knows about it. So preschool years, they express their distress still through some tantrums and irritability, but they have that increased verbalization of their emotions, and their expressions become a little bit clearer, but they begin to self-regulate, but they still may be kind of erratic in their feelings. They lack that eloquence and the ability for them to organize their thoughts. So here's a little video that kind of displays that. So this little girl is stressed out about several things, but it takes a little bit because what she starts out with is something very simple. So you can see that little girl had a lot of things going on in her emotions. So don't forget about her, because we're going to talk about her a little later on in our presentation.
Okay, moving on to school-aged kids and how they express distress. So children of this age are now able to verbalize their emotions and understand their emotions more so than kids under this age group. So they may have physical symptoms of distress, such as a stomach ache or a headache. They could also have emotional symptoms like anxiety or apprehension. They may also begin to engage in more attention-seeking types of behaviors. So kind of similar to toddlers in a way, but the behaviors are just a little bit more developed. So for example, a child who is typically really good at school might start becoming disruptive or get in trouble, or a child in the home might start fighting with their siblings just to get attention of either a parent or a teacher, and be just attention seeking in that way. So children of this age, like I said, they have a more improved awareness of their bodies and their emotions. And they also have developed theory of mind. So at this point in their life, they're able to understand emotions and what other people are experiencing through that person's point of view. So they can, kind of put themselves in somebody else's shoes and recognize or understand a little bit how another person might be feeling. So this can help the child predict and interpret the behaviors of others. And it can also help them to reflect on their own emotions and recognize that you can have more than one emotion for the same experience. Right, and finally, for adolescents, they are now moving more from having their main social groups as their parents and family, and they're shifting over to social groups such as peers. And with that they can develop a lot of irritability, have risky behaviors, kind of like an I don't care attitude. And a lot of this comes from the fact that their brains are still developing. So in this stage, they are still developing their prefrontal cortex. And so the teens have to rely on their amygdala for making decisions and solving problems. And the amygdala lacks impulse control. So teens who are feeling distressed, they are more likely to engage in risky behaviors because they aren't thinking about what might happen after, what might happen as a consequence. They don't have that ability to control their impulses. And then also due to a lot of these changes that are happening in their bodies, like physical, emotional, and social changes, teens are very prone or very vulnerable to mental health problems in general. So it's important to keep an eye on them, especially during stressful periods of life. Right, so where do we start? Now we kind of see, what stress looks like in our kids during each stage of their life. So where do we begin? How do we try and help them through this? So before you can find balance for your kids, you need to recognize the imbalance in yourself. We hear this all the time about when you're on an airplane, you have to put the mask on yourself first before you help the person next to you. And even though that analogy is a little overused, it really resonates here, because when we're talking about helping our kids find emotional balance, we really need to recognize that we aren't able to do that until we have that balance within ourselves. Okay, so some signs to recognize in ourselves that might be hinting that we have some sort of imbalance is trouble sleeping. This can be sleeping too much or too little. Maybe you're feeling fatigue all the time. Maybe you are restless and you can't sleep, or you're waking up frequently during the night. Over or under eating is another big one. You might be more irritable than usual. You'll have a shorter temper. And you could also be distracted with unimportant tasks. So you might have a project for work or something that you need to get done, and then little tasks that aren't really important in the moment are distracting you, are keeping you from getting what really needs to be done accomplished. And kind of what goes along with that is your mind might be wandering. You might have difficulty focusing, difficulty sitting still. Anything really that disrupts your normal day-to-day activities can be a sign of imbalance within yourself. So let's try and find balance in ourselves. So some tips to find balance in you is to give yourself a timeout. So we talk about giving our kids timeouts as a punishment, but the whole idea behind a timeout is that it's actually to have your kid or yourself, if you're giving yourself a timeout, a couple minutes just to breathe, to take a moment, step back from everything. As an adult, you take a break from work and your phone, and just take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, and just breathe and center yourself again. Give yourself that time out. Also, give your permission to let some things go. I know it can be really easy to feel like we need to be perfect at everything and say yes to everything. and everyone, but sometimes we just need to say no, or don't hold on to things that maybe have been bothering us in the past and just let it go. You can't control everything. And once we recognize that, a lot of weight can be lifted from your shoulders just by letting go. And then I like this one where you give yourself permission to make modifications. So let's say your kids have a bake sale and you're supposed to bake, 2 dozen cupcakes. Maybe you're really stressed and that's just not doable right now. That's one extra thing on your plate that you cannot deal with. Give yourself permission to run to the store and just pick up the cupcakes. You don't need to sit at home and bake them from scratch. If it's too much, that's okay. Give yourself permission to make those adaptations or modifications so that you're spending your time, instead of stressing out in the kitchen baking, maybe you're spending more time with your kids, or maybe now you have time to give yourself a timeout and regather yourself. Then a little acronym here, HALT, stands for hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. These are 4 major things that if these are all okay, if these are all satisfied, you will likely be able to find balance in yourself. So, if you're hungry, I don't know if anybody here gets hangry, like when you haven't eaten for a long time, you get very irritable. If you find that happening and you feed yourself, you might have that balance again. Anger is an important one to point out because it's actually a secondary emotion. So if you are feeling angry, the way to resolve that is to find the source of your anger. So I like to use the example of stubbing your toe. I don't know why it elicits like a very upset emotion, an angry emotion in me when I stub my toe, but the anger didn't just come out of nowhere. The primary factor was stubbing my toe and feeling that pain, and the secondary emotion was the anger. So sometimes we might feel angry and take it out on somebody else, but really we have to find the root of that anger and solve it from there.
So let's talk about our children and their emotional awareness. Now that we have a little bit of emotional awareness of our own. So attunement. What is attunement? You might have heard being attuned with your child or having attunement with your child. Attunement is the ability to observe, read cues, decode, engage, and respond to your child or another person for an unbroken feeling of connectedness and continued reading of ongoing cues based upon the previous response. So sounds kind of big and awkward and probably not something we feel like we do, but we do it all the time. So it's really about accurately reflecting emotions back to children that they are experiencing. So you want to break it down a little bit. The ability to observe. So not just react to a child's emotion, but to actually kind of take a step back and observe. What is it that's really happening? Reading their cues. What happened just before the emotion happened? So in Morgan's example, say stubbing the toe. You see somebody that's angry, maybe they just stubbed their toe. Decode. So what is your child mad at? Or who are they mad at? And are they really mad or angry or upset at that person? Or is it because of another emotion? So for example, maybe the child's going to be starting a new childcare place, another childcare situation the next day. And they're just kind of off. They're just a little irritable. They're off. They're a little touchier. And you're trying to get dinner ready and you ask them to go wash their hands and they throw whatever is in their hand at your head. Is a child really mad at you because you asked them to wash their hands and that's why they threw it? Or are they scared or nervous or apprehensive about what's going to happen the next day? So you really need to think about what exactly is going on and then engage with your child. So get down on their level. Don't tower over them and speak in a loud and maybe frustrated or annoyed voice. Think of that little girl sitting on the bed and mom is obviously standing up over her and talking down to her. Get down on their level. It really makes for a great connection if you can look somebody in the eye. If you can't bend down, lift them up and get them to your level. And then respond. Show empathy. validate those feelings, listen to them, just hear what they're saying, and then determine what next steps are. So continue to read those cues. Attunement can build a bond that lasts throughout the lifetime of a relationship. It's really an intimate bond, and it's a foundation for all other communication with that person. So do we have attunement with our child? Some things to think about. It's attunement, it takes time. You need to be patient, and it changes over time. Just like when you have a baby and you know the difference between a cry that means I'm hungry and a cry that means my diaper needs to be changed. Those emotions and those ability for that child to share those emotions and for you to be able to read them changes over time. So be patient. It takes time to learn. It takes time to learn those cues, which means taking time with your child, especially if you may not have the time for yourself, or you might not have the emotional bandwidth to do it, but it's really worth doing. You want to let children share their feelings without trying to fix them. So that is really hard to do. We don't like to see our kids in pain or in anguish. It's sometimes just listening to them, validating, letting them know you're there is really what they need. That's what's really important. And remember that children can be what they see. So if your anxiety is high, is it contributing to your child's anxiety? So think about, I'm listening to the rain right now, and with rain, a lot of times comes thunderstorms. So if there's a thunderstorm and if it's thundering and lightning out and you're anxious about it, that's going to be transmitted to your child, and your child's going to feel that fear and anxiety from the thunderstorm. But if you remain calm and patient with them and not diminish their feelings or their concerns, then they're more likely to remain calm as well, or less agitated and anxious. Same with a crying baby. Sing a song that makes you feel good to calm yourself down, and then your baby was more likely to calm down. So how does this help you? Well, if your child is less stressed, it means you're going to be less stressed. And a child that's not as stressed and not as emotional and able to share their emotions is a lot easier to parent. And that just makes it better all around. So what happens if you're not in attunement or things aren't right? If cues are missed, a parent's response can be incorrect, or it could even drive a larger, more negative response from the child because they feel unheard. So think back to that little girl who had to go potty. It wasn't the glasses. The glasses pinching her wasn't the problem. That was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. What was really worrying her was not even going potty, but it sounds like what was really bothering her was the fear of the potty overflowing. Mom must have told her it could overflow or something like that, but that was where that real fear was driven. And so mom, instead of taking the time to think about that, instead kind of mocked her, oh, you're never going to go potty ever again, which we all know is not true. And then, she really struggled to connect with that girl on what her feelings were. The little girl didn't want to flush, but she did want to flush. And, that ambivalence, that inability to kind of determine where our own fears come from when it comes out to others can be even more confusing. And so mom wasn't really helpful with that. In that video, she really wasn't connected, and that kind of drove that little girl's feelings even more. You could see her scrubbing her face. She was trying to regulate herself and figure out even where she was coming from. And remember too, that temperaments can differ from a parent to a child, and they may not communicate affection in the same way. So a child that maybe really loves hugs and touches and kisses, a parent may not like that. They may prefer words of affirmation. So they might prefer praise instead. So they're really speaking to each other in opposite terms. If you've ever heard of love languages, it's worth checking out. It's worth checking out for everybody in your family. I think it really helps the family to know where everybody's love language is. And so remember, these types of things can interfere with attunement. In babies, it's even more important because babies can actually live in a state of stress due to unmet needs, and that's not healthy, and not only for emotional and physical development, but it can change the structure of their brain. So it's really important to always work on getting in attunement with our children. It also helps to teach children how to identify their own feelings and label them, which is really important. So when we're labeling our emotions, they deserve the right name. So when we talk about feelings with kiddos, try and expand on them when you can. So instead of saying, oh, you look happy or sad or mad or glad, some of those standard ones that we have, it's really important to instead talk about, kind of dig in deeper and talk about what the emotion is by expanding on the name. So instead of happy, you are excited or exuberant or ecstatic. I'm coming up with all E's right now, but if you're not scared, maybe you're nervous or you're apprehensive, or instead of sad, you're disappointed or you're lonely. Loneliness often looks like sadness. Mad is a real general term. We're mad, we're mad, we're mad. But maybe you're annoyed or you're frustrated or you're bothered. Thinking about how we can teach our children the names of emotions and what they're really all about is very important. It helps build a relationship. It builds a relationship, that bonding and attunement between you and the child. It builds vocabulary. It's a great way to teach kids new words, and we all want to teach them new words, right? And then children feel heard and understood. Children feel like they have a connection and that somebody listened to them. One of my earliest memories is with my brother when he just stood and listened to me share about something that was bothering me, when he was going to be running out the door with his friends, but he took time, and that was a long time ago. And that really, I can still feel that feeling even today. And so it really sticks with the child when they feel heard and understood. Remember, you always want to praise those behaviors you want to see more of too. So when a child names their own feeling, names their own emotion, make sure you praise them. That was a really good job. You did a great job talking about how scared you were just now. Share those words with them. You also want to let them know it's okay to have feelings, and there's no shame in that. A lot of times we kind of minimize. Again, going back to that mom in that video, she really she wasn't very nice to her daughter when her daughter was obviously really scared, and she kind of minimized it. And those feelings of shame can stay with us for a lifetime. We've all heard, oh, don't cry, you're fine, or it's no big deal, or shake it off, or whatever it is. But we also want to think about what message is that sharing with our children, and how is that going to go with them the rest of their life? How is that going to go with them in adulthood? So we want to teach our kids emotional intelligence. And by doing that, we give them a gift that will last them a lifetime and something they can share with other people. You also want to help them learn what makes them feel better. So what brings them to a better place than where they are at this moment. And it might be different, not only for every child in your family, but also for different feelings. So maybe it needs to be to play a game or go for a walk. Maybe they need to take a bath or sit quietly together, sing a song, just do something that kind of helps them live in that emotion for a moment and then learn how to process it, and not to dismiss it, like just ignore it, it's fine, go play. But how can we kind of overcome that? Just like when we're lonely, maybe we, pick up our phone and we text somebody, or we call somebody, or we might, go to the store or go visit somebody. And so they need to know ways to help their emotions too. You want to avoid the habit of dismissing a feeling when there's obviously something wrong, or maybe there isn't something wrong. But we don't want to dismiss feelings either, because that's telling our children that their feelings aren't important and they shouldn't be feeling them, and that they should ignore them. And so we don't want to do that. Again, going back to that poor mom and that daughter, she was really dismissive of her daughter's feelings. And she said, well, I'm going to go to the bathroom and you just come out when you're ready. She just really ignored her daughter's concerns. And so you want to remember that it may not be obvious to you, but their feelings are very obvious to them. So you want to, again, take time. It takes energy and it takes time, but it's really worth it. And then learn how to keep your cool in tense moments. You want to be able to take a breath. And if it gets out of hand, hit that reset button. You might even want to say, hey, I need to hit the reset button, and then try again. So maybe it's been a long day. You're trying to get dinner on the table and you have to deal with homework as soon as you get done, and everybody's tired from maybe a late night the night before. And so you turn around and you snap at the kids, just set the table and quit messing around, and oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And so say, I need to hit the reset button. Ooh, okay, everyone, sorry about that. So if you could set the table, we can get dinner eaten sooner, and then we can get to homework, and then hopefully we have a few minutes that we can have some fun yet tonight. Hit the reset button. It demonstrates to kids it's okay to try something again and do it better, and to do it in a calm way. So hitting that reset button is really important. And maybe it's not the reset button that you use. Maybe it's another term. Pick something that fits your family. And then you also want to model those appropriate expressions in all ranges. So label your feelings. When you are looking for your sock for the other sock and you're getting frustrated and you're stomping around the house, say, I am really upset because I cannot find my sock and I don't know where it is and it's making me late for work. And that is making me nervous that I'm going to be late for work. Label those emotions, share them with your children. And then kids can begin to recognize those emotions in you. And then they can also recognize the emotions in themselves. And remember, when they start to begin to recognize these things, they'll do a better job in sharing it with other people. So we have this great video. It's really quick. It's not very long. It's only a few seconds long. Some of you may have seen this. I love this video. This is what happens when you teach a child some good emotional skills and then they share it with others. So this is a wonderful video. I'm going to pray it again. I don't know about you, but I just love that video. I want that kid with me most days because I need him to look at me and go, no, breathe, breathe. He is a perfect little guy. And he does a great job at calming his little brother down from having that tantrum that was coming. And so just remember that little guy, that it is possible to teach kids to do these types of things. And then they share it with others, which I think makes a person, feel even more proud of the work that they do when helping teach their kids emotional intelligence.
All right, so being mindful of our time, I wanted to share a quick story about my daughter that kind of ties in all these topics that Nicole just went through about attunement and recognizing and labeling emotions, and listening to your children when they're expressing them. So a little bit of background on my daughter. She's 4 and she is in 4K and then she has aftercare. And on Thursdays, she goes straight from school to dance class. She has 2 dance classes. One is at 4:30, one is at 6. They're only half an hour long, so we run home in between, change, eat supper, and then run to the second class ballet. So this was on a Thursday. I picked her up from school. Everything was great. I bring a snack in the car. She eats. Food makes her very happy. We go to the first class. She has a blast. It's hip hop, very energetic, lots of fun. She's great in the car ride on the way home. And the second we walk in the door, and I say, all right, let's get our shoes off and let's get changed. I'm gonna get your supper ready. The second we walk in the door, her smile's gone. She is, has one shoe off. She's laying on the floor. She's crying. She's doing this weird crawling thing towards the closet. She's extremely upset. And, I'm saying, let's go. We are on a time crunch. I want you to be able to eat. She goes to bed fairly early. So after ballet, we head straight to bed. Like, you need to get supper in now so you have a chance to eat. We have to move. And she's just not having it. She's really upset. And finally, I must have said, all right, let's go, honey. Like, let's move. We got to go. Probably, 10 times. And she stopped me and she said, Mom, I am just so tired. And so that really, she was just the most exasperated, straightforward sentence I think she's ever said to me. Mom, I am just so tired. And so I stopped and I thought, what does she need right now? Does she need to go to ballet class? She doesn't. Does she need to have supper shoved down her throat right now? No. Does she need to take her other shoe off right now? No, she does not. And so I asked her, I said, would you like to skip ballet? Should we just not go tonight? Do you need a break? And she said, yes. And after that, she was bouncing off the walls. She was super happy, back to her normal self. She's a very funny girl. She's making jokes. She's laughing. She's helping me get supper together. Her life had just turned right around. The second I said, I gave her that choice, do you want to skip ballet? And that was everything. That took our night from a horrible, tantrums and exhaustion, and to really just listening to her words and understanding that what she needed right then was not ballet class, or me pressuring her to move things along. She just needed permission to make that modification and say, like, I don't want to go. I'm tired. I want the night off. And that's what we did. And, since then we haven't had that issue, but her ability to name her emotion and then me to listen, that attunement is really necessary for helping our kids relieve their stress. Had I pressed it further, she probably would have had an awful night. And who knows, how long that memory, that night would have stuck with her. Maybe she would have hated dance classes moving forward. You don't know. But we threw this feelings thermometer on here. Unfortunately, Children's doesn't make these anymore. They used to come as magnets. We looked into it, they don't make them anymore, but if you Google feelings thermometer, you can find a ton of different pictures. But this is just a cool chart to have so your kids can help express or point out, label their emotions. So they have like these little smiley faces and sad face, anxious face. So if your child can't read or they don't know how to label their emotion yet, they can point to one of these pictures and say, this is how I'm feeling. And you could label it for them. Or are you feeling angry? Are you feeling frustrated? And that just helps your child it empowers your child to be able to express their emotions. It also is a good reminder for you to be able to glance at the chart and think, hey, are you feeling anxious? And point to the anxious space. And then on here, there's even some tips, what can you do about it? So you're feeling anxious. Let's focus on what we can control. Like, let's not go to dance. We can control that. We can stay home. So this was just a cool little chart. It's a great thing to like throw on your refrigerator if you wanted to print one off of the internet. And just really empowers your kids to help them to learn to label their emotions. Even though your child might not be able to name a sophisticated emotion like apprehension, or feeling withdrawn, that doesn't mean that they aren't feeling that. They just aren't able to tell you yet. So you have to help them get there. All right, so finally, some little tips for finding balance for our kids. A big one is to avoid overscheduling. We probably took on too much when we did 2 dance classes in one night. And schedule downtime, have time for people to have fun and relax and breathe and not feel the pressure of always needing to be somewhere at some time. Keep to a schedule. Children and adults, I believe, do amazing with consistency, having a routine or a schedule that you keep. And provide a safe space for emotions. Be a safe person for your child to come to, where they feel comfortable to express their emotions, where they don't think you're going to shut them down or mock them or belittle what they're feeling, that you will empower them, you'll validate their feelings. And then make sure your emotional expectations for your children are attainable and reasonable. Understand what your 3-year-old can express. Understand how much they can handle. And then, is no really the answer? Sometimes it's more than that. It's not just no, it can be, not now, or, here's an alternative, something other than just saying no.
So that is the end of our presentation. We ended this with this picture, with just, mom sitting there pretty, thinking that she's having a great time on her vacation, when little does she know dad's doing a great job keeping their son safe. So sometimes that's the attitude we need to take is, you know what, right now it's okay. And somebody else has got this. So does anyone have any questions or thoughts they'd like to share? So if there's no questions, this is our contact information. You can feel free to contact us here. Children's Wisconsin does have a Facebook page, and we offer a lot of free fun family events. And we have a lot of parenting resources. So you can reach us at Marathon County FRC on Facebook and see what our latest things are that we are offering.